Tonight, we enter the shadows of feudal Japan once more as we stealthily traverse the dangerous world of Tenchu. And if you find that this deadly tale resonates with your inner shinobi, please feel free to leave a like and consider subscribing for more content like this. It helps ensure that this video doesn't get banished into another realm alongside Lord Mayo. I would appreciate it, but for now, sip some herbal tea and get cozy as we embark on another deadly mission into the world of Tenchu. Moonlight cast long shadows across Goda Castle's inner chambers as Rikimaru knelt silently in the darkness. His breath, controlled and measured, made no sound as he maintained his vigil outside his lord's private quarters. Something wasn't right. The night air carried an unusual chill, one that spoke not of winter's approach, but of malevolent intent. 3 days had passed since the Azuma ninja had intercepted a coded message speaking of the Lord's final night. While others dismissed it as the ramblings of disgruntled peasants, Rikimaru knew better. 15 years of service as Lord Goda's shadow had honed his instincts to a lethal edge. A subtle disturbance in the air, barely perceptible, caused Rikimaru to tense. His hand moved to Izayoi, the blade that had tasted the blood of countless enemies, the sword that had pierced Onikage's heart 1 year ago in the Demon's Keep. The shoji screen across the courtyard slid open without a sound. Had Rikimaru not been watching for it, he would have missed the movement entirely. A figure, darker than the night itself, slipped inside. Too skilled for a common assassin, he thought, drawing his blade in one fluid motion as he moved like smoke across the courtyard. Inside Lord Goda's chamber, the daimyo slept peacefully, unaware of the shadow that crept toward his bed. The assassin moved with unnatural grace, each step placed with inhuman precision. As the intruder raised a curved blade that gleamed with an eerie blue light, Rikimaru struck. Izayoi sliced through the air, but the assassin sensed his presence at the last moment. With impossible speed, the killer twisted away, the sacred blade cutting only cloth instead of flesh. Lord Goda woke with a start. What treachery is this? The assassin's face remained hidden behind a black mask, but Rikimaru could see the eyes, yellow with vertical pupils that glowed in the darkness. "Protect Lord Goda," Rikimaru commanded the guards who now rushed into the room. He launched himself at the assassin, Izayoi singing through the air. Their blades met with a sound like shattering ice. The impact sent a painful vibration through Rikimaru's arm. The assassin's strength was monstrous. "The master sends his regards, Dragon of the Azuma," the assassin hissed, voice distorted and hollow. "Onikage's grudge transcends death." Rikimaru's blood ran cold. "Onikage is dead. I killed him myself." The assassin laughed, a sound like stones grinding together. "Nothing truly dies in the shadow realm." With unexpected swiftness, the assassin hurled something to the floor. A blinding flash illuminated the room, followed by acrid smoke that burned Rikimaru's lungs. By the time his vision cleared, the intruder had vanished. At the window, A small scroll had been pinned to the wooden frame with a throwing knife. Rikimaru approached cautiously, unrolling the parchment with the tip of his sword. Written in blood were 4 characters. The sleeping dragon awakens. Lord Goda approached, his face grim in the torchlight. What does this mean? It means Onikage's shadow still darkens our path, Rikimaru replied, his voice tight. But there's more. The assassin's blade. It bore markings I've seen before, in Minister Hamada's private collection. Hamada? He has been a trusted advisor for years. Even the sturdiest tree may harbor rot within, Rikimaru said. I must investigate further. Lord Goda nodded gravely. Do what you must, but work from the shadows. If Hamada is indeed involved, he must not suspect our knowledge. There is one more thing, my lord, Rikimaru added, kneeling to examine a fine black powder on the floor where the assassin had stood. The substance had an unnatural blue sheen. This is not the work of mere men. There are traces of dark magic at play. Then we shall need both you and Ayame. She has been watching the merchant district where rumors speak of strange shipments arriving under cover of night. Rikimaru nodded. I will find her at dawn. Until then, double your guards and trust no one outside this room. As Rikimaru disappeared into the night, Lord Goda looked down at the threatening message, his hand tightening around the parchment. After all these years of peace, he whispered to himself, the shadows return to claim their due. Little did he know that this was merely the first ripple in a rising tide of darkness that threatened to engulf his entire domain. Ayame moved like a spring breeze through the crowded Echigoya district, her jewel blades concealed beneath the simple blue kimono she wore. Unlike Rikimaru's preference for midnight operations, she found daylight offered its own kind of shadows. The chaos of crowded streets, the distraction of merchants hawking their wares, the perfect anonymity of being just another face in the throng. 3 days of watching the merchant guild had yielded little until this morning, when she'd spotted Minister Hamada's personal guard escorting a covered palanquin to a nondescript warehouse. For a man who claims to despise the merchant class, Hamada certainly keeps interesting company, she muttered, slipping between 2 argumentative fish vendors. The warehouse stood apart from others, its windows covered with heavy paper screens. 2 guards flanked the entrance, their armor bearing Hamada's crest, a serpent coiled around a sword. Ayame approached from the rear, scaling the adjacent building with practiced ease. A small gap in the roof tiles provided both entry and a view of the warehouse interior. Below, Minister Hamada's distinctive voice echoed against the wooden walls. The shipment from the southern islands must arrive without scrutiny. Lord Goda's men are growing suspicious. A second voice answered, female, with an accent Ayame couldn't place. The Lord's suspicions are the least of your concerns, Minister. Lady Kagami grows impatient with delays. Ayame stiffened. Lady Kagami, the sorceress who had once served Tenrai before his defeat. She was supposed to have perished when Tenrai's fortress collapsed. I have upheld my end of our arrangement. Hamada insisted, fear evident in his voice. The tax records have been altered. The gold flows to your mistress as agreed. Gold is merely metal, Minister. Lady Kagami requires the artifacts. Without them, the ritual cannot proceed. Ayame shifted position to get a better view. Below, a woman dressed in unusual garments stood before a kneeling Hamada. Her face was painted white with red markings around her eyes, the distinctive appearance of Lady Kagami's acolytes. The artifacts arrived tonight, Hamada said, but the attempt on Lord Goda failed. The white-haired demon of the Azuma clan interfered. The woman's laugh was cold as winter rain. Rikimaru's intervention was anticipated. Lady Kagami has prepared for the dragon of the Azuma. She reached into her robes and withdrew a small cloth bundle, which she handed to Hamada. When the moon reaches its zenith tonight, burn this at the castle's eastern gate. It will ensure the guard changes are delayed. Ayame had seen enough. She needed to warn Rikimaru and Lord Goda. However, as she prepared to retreat, her foot dislodged a loose tile. The sound was slight, but in the quiet warehouse, it may as well have been a temple bell. "We have uninvited ears," the woman hissed, her head snapping up toward the roof. Ayame cursed under her breath and rolled away from the opening just as a throwing knife embedded itself next to her. The blade sizzled with an unnatural green flame that melted the surrounding tiles. Guards shouted below as Ayame sprinted across the rooftop. Two of Hamada's men had already scaled the adjacent building and were in pursuit. Ordinary guards she could handle, but if the woman below was truly one of Lady Kagami's disciples, this situation had become far more dangerous. Ayame leapt across an alleyway to the next building, her mind racing. Lady Kagami alive and conspiring with Minister Hamada? Artifacts and rituals? This was no simple political treachery. A throwing star whizzed past her ear, drawing blood. Ayame spun and flung one of her kunai in response. The blade found its mark in a guard's throat, sending him tumbling from the roof. "So much for stealth," she muttered, drawing her twin blades as three more guards appeared ahead, cutting off her escape route. With practiced precision, Ayame engaged the guards. Her blades danced in the sunlight, drawing crimson arcs through the air. Two fell quickly, but the third proved more skilled than his companions. "You fight well for one of Hamada's dogs," Ayame taunted, parrying a thrust aimed at her abdomen. The guard smiled coldly. "I serve a greater master than Hamada." For a brief moment, his eyes flashed an unnatural yellow. Ayame felt a chill run down her spine as the guard's movements became inhumanly fast. She barely blocked a strike that would have separated her head from her shoulders. The impact numbed her arm and sent one of her blades skittering across the tiles. In desperation, Ayame reached for the smoke bomb at her waist and hurled it at the guard's feet. The explosion of black smoke provided the moment she needed. Instead of retreating, she launched herself directly at her opponent, her remaining blade finding the gap in his armor at the throat. As he fell, his body began to dissolve into black powder, gleaming with an eerie blue sheen. "Onikage's sorcery," Ayame whispered, recognizing the signature of their old nemesis. She retrieved her fallen blade and quickly searched the dissolving corpse. Inside a hidden pocket, she found a small scroll bearing Minister Hamada's seal. Breaking it open, she found a list of names, castle guards, servants, and even one of Lord Goda's advisors, each marked with strange symbols. A list of conspirators or targets. Shouts from below indicated more guards were coming. Ayame tucked the scroll into her pocket and fled across the rooftops toward Goda Castle. Whatever darkness was gathering, it centered around Minister Hamada, Lady Kagami, and the phantom of their old enemy, Onikage. As she ran, a cold certainty settled in her heart. The peace they had fought so hard to achieve was about to shatter. Dawn painted the eastern sky in hues of blood and fire as Rikimaru made his way up the winding path to Shiunsai Shrine. The ancient stone steps, worn by centuries of pilgrims' feet, led to a sacred place where the veil between worlds grew thin. If Onikage's influence was indeed reaching from beyond death, this shrine, dedicated to the boundary between living and dead, would bear signs of the disturbance. The forest surrounding the shrine path had grown unnaturally silent. No birds called, no insects hummed. Even the wind seemed reluctant to stir the leaves. Rikimaru's hand rested on his sword, senses alert to the weighted stillness. "You feel it too," came a voice from the shadows of a massive cedar. Rikimaru didn't turn. "Tenchu, I thought you had returned to your practice in the capital." The physician by day, assassin by night, emerged from behind the tree, medical bag slung over one shoulder. His weighted hand claw, the deadly Takagi, glinted from beneath his sleeve. "A doctor goes where sickness spreads," he replied, falling into step beside Rikimaru. "And something is very sick in Lord Goda's realm. 3 villagers dead in the past week, their bodies drained of blood and marked with symbols I've not seen since Tenrai's cult was destroyed." "Lady Kagami's work," Rikimaru said. "Ayame is investigating a connection to Minister Hamada." Tenchu's expression darkened. "Then our paths converge. One of the dead was a guard in Hamada's household. Before he died, he sought treatment for recurring nightmares. He claimed to see a man with a demon's face standing at the foot of his bed each night, a man he had helped entomb months ago." They reached the shrine's torii gate, and both men stopped. Beyond the vermilion archway, the shrine grounds appeared normal to casual observation. Stone lanterns lining the approach, the small offering hall, the main sanctuary rising behind it. Yet to Rikimaru's trained eye, subtle wrongness permeated everything. The sacred rope hanging across the sanctuary entrance was frayed in an unnatural pattern. The water in the purification font rippled, absent breeze. The stone guardian dogs flanking the steps seemed to have shifted position slightly, their snarling faces now directed inward toward the shrine rather than outward to ward off evil. "Something has corrupted this place," Rikimaru murmured. As if in response, a low humming began to emanate from the sanctuary. It grew in intensity, vibrating through the stone beneath their feet. "The shrine maiden," Tenchu said suddenly. "Where is she?" Rikimaru scanned the grounds. The elderly woman who had tended this shrine for decades should have emerged at their arrival. Her absence spoke volumes. Drawing Izayoi, Rikimaru approached the sanctuary. The sacred blade glowed faintly in response to the spiritual disturbance. With a nod to Tenchu, who readied his takagi, Rikimaru slid open the sanctuary door. The smell hit them first, copper and rot. The shrine maiden lay sprawled before the altar, her white robes stained crimson. Around her body, black candles formed a perfect circle, their flames burning an unnatural purple. 3 days dead, Tenchu said after a brief examination. Her heart was removed while she still lived. Behind the altar, where the shrine's sacred mirror normally stood, someone had mounted a different reflective surface, a polished black obsidian disc inscribed with characters that seemed to shift and move when viewed directly. "A seeing stone," Rikimaru said grimly. "Onikage used one to communicate with Tenrai from the Shadow Realm." He approached carefully, sword raised defensively. The surface of the obsidian began to swirl like black water, and a voice emanated from its depths, familiar, hated, impossible. "The dragon returns to my web." Onikage's distinctive rasp echoed through the sanctuary. "How fitting that you seek me in a house of spirits, Rikimaru." The obsidian surface cleared to reveal Onikage's face, the same demonic visage that had haunted Rikimaru's dreams for years. The face of the demon who had murdered his master, Shiunsai, whose name this desecrated shrine bore. "You died by my blade," Rikimaru stated, his voice cold and controlled despite the rage building within him. Onikage's laugh reverberated from the stone. "Death is merely a doorway, dragon of the Azuma. You sent me through it, but Lady Kagami has provided the key to my return. Whatever ritual you and the sorceress plan, it ends here." Rikimaru raised Izayoi, preparing to shatter the obsidian. "Strike the messenger if you wish," Onikage taunted. "It changes nothing. Even now, Lady Kagami prepares the vessel. Royal blood will open the gate, and I shall walk again in the realm of flesh." Royal blood. The words struck Rikimaru like a physical blow. "Princess Kiku," he breathed. "The princess is well guarded," Tenchu said, stepping forward. "Your servants cannot reach her." Onikage's expression shifted to one of malicious delight. "My servants are already within your precious castle walls. They have worn the faces of Goda's loyal subjects for months. The princess's personal guard, her handmaidens, even her beloved tutor." "You lie," Rikimaru said, but doubt had taken root. "Ask yourself, dragon, when did you last set eyes upon the princess? When did Lord Goda himself last speak with his daughter directly, rather than through her attendants?" Cold realization washed over Rikimaru. It had been nearly a week since he'd seen Princess Kiku in the castle gardens. Lord Goda had mentioned that she was indisposed with a seasonal illness, being tended by her ladies and the court physician. "The physician," Tenchu muttered. I was called to consult on a strange malady affecting one of the castle guards. When I arrived, the court physician turned me away, claiming the situation was under control. Tonight, when the blood moon rises, Onikage continued, savoring their dismay, the princess will fulfill her purpose. Lady Kagami will open the gateway, and I shall return. Hamada will be rewarded with the lordship he craves, and Goda's line will end, as will the Azuma clan. Rikimaru's control broke. With a shout of rage, he brought his sword down upon the obsidian disc. The sacred blade shattered the stone, sending black fragments flying across the sanctuary. Onikage's laughter continued to echo even as the pieces settled. "We must return to the castle immediately," Rikimaru said, sheathing his blade. "Wait." Tenchu knelt beside the shrine maiden's body. There's something clutched in her hand. Carefully, he pried open the dead woman's fingers. Within her grasp was a small jade figurine. A dragon curled protectively around a temple. The temple of the sleeping dragon. Rikimaru recognized the distinctive architecture depicted in the carving. It lies abandoned in the northern mountains. Not abandoned any longer, it seems, Tenchu replied. This was a message she died trying to deliver. Rikimaru took the jade piece, studying it intently. The temple housed ancient texts on barrier magic and realm separation. If Lady Kagami plans to open a gateway for Onikage's return, then the ritual components would be described in those texts, Tenchu finished, including how to prepare the sacrifice. A distant rumble of thunder punctuated their realization. Storm clouds had gathered with unnatural speed, circling above the shrine like vultures. "Time grows short," Rikimaru said, pocketing the jade figurine. "I must find Ayame and warn Lord Goda. Can you reach the temple and discover what ritual they plan?" Tenchu nodded. "The northern pass will be watched. I'll take the old smuggler's route through the mountain caves." As they exited the defiled shrine, the first heavy drops of rain began to fall, black as ink against the stone path. Where they touched Rikimaru's skin, they burned like embers. "Corruption falls from the very sky," Tenchu observed grimly. "Onikage's influence grows stronger by the hour." Rikimaru gazed toward Goda Castle, barely visible in the distance through the gathering storm. "Then we have until nightfall to stop what has been set in motion. After that," he left the thought unfinished, but both men understood. After nightfall, they would face either victory or the end of everything they had fought to protect. Twilight shrouded Minister Hamada's estate in long shadows as Ayame crouched on the rooftop of a nearby bathhouse. Steam billowed around her, providing additional cover as she studied the compound's defenses. After sharing her discoveries with Rikimaru at their rendezvous point, they had agreed to divide their efforts. He would return to warn Lord Goda and verify Princess Kiku's safety, while she would infiltrate Hamada's estate to find concrete evidence of his treachery. 12 guards on rotation. Ayame counted silently. The security was excessive for a minister, even one as wealthy and paranoid as Hamada. More telling was the presence of 4 figures in dark blue robes who stood motionless at each corner of the compound. Lady Kagami's acolytes, recognizable by their distinctive face paint and the ceremonial daggers at their waists. The minister keeps interesting company for a man who publicly denounces sorcery. Ayame murmured, recalling Hamada's passionate speeches against superstitious practices in Lord Goda's court. She waited as the guard patrol passed beneath her position, then dropped silently onto the estate wall. The stone was strangely cold beneath her hands, radiating a chill that penetrated her gloves. Moving like a shadow, she made her way toward the main house, avoiding the pools of light cast by paper lanterns. A servant emerged from a side door, carrying a tray of food toward what appeared to be a storehouse at the rear of the property. Ayame followed, keeping to the shadows of ornamental pines that lined the garden path. The servant placed the tray before the storehouse door and knocked 3 times, then twice more. A small viewing panel slid open, eyes gleaming in the darkness beyond. Words were exchanged too quietly for her to hear. Then the door opened just wide enough to admit the tray before slamming shut. Prisoners? Ayame wondered. Or something Hamada doesn't want his household to see. Once the servant had returned to the main house, Ayame approached the storehouse. The building had been reinforced, its wooden walls overlaid with metal plating, its windows sealed with the same material. No ordinary storehouse would require such measures. The lock on the door was complex, but nothing her picks couldn't handle. Within moments, the mechanism unlocked with a click, and she eased the door open just enough to slip inside. The interior was dimly lit by a single oil lamp, its light revealing rows of shelves filled with artifacts, ancient scrolls, ceremonial weapons, containers of powders and liquids, and most disturbing of all, human remains, fingers, eyes, and other parts preserved in glass jars. Lady Kagami's collection, she realized, recognizing the components for blood sorcery that the sorceress favored. At the far end of the storehouse, a heavy curtain covered what appeared to be a doorway. Carefully stepping around the shelves, Ayame approached and gently pulled the fabric aside. Beyond lay a small chamber dominated by a stone altar. Upon it rested a life-sized doll crafted to resemble Princess Kiku in perfect detail. From her long black hair to the birthmark on her left wrist. The doll wore robes of white silk, identical to ceremonial garments worn by the imperial family. Its eyes were painted closed, as if in peaceful sleep. A proxy for the ritual, Ayame whispered, her blood running cold. She had seen such dolls used in sympathetic magic before. What was done to the doll would affect the real princess, creating a connection that could be exploited for the actual ceremony. Surrounding the altar were 5 black candles arranged in a star pattern. 3 had burned completely, 1 was halfway consumed, and the 5th remained unlit. A small knife with a jade handle lay beside the doll, its blade stained with what appeared to be fresh blood. Ayame carefully examined the chamber for any additional clues. On the wall hung a map of Lord Goda's province with 5 locations marked in red, 3 crossed out, including the Shionsai shrine where Rikimaru had gone. The 4th mark indicated a location within Goda Castle itself, while the 5th pointed to the Temple of the Sleeping Dragon in the northern mountains. The ritual sites, Ayame realized. They're creating a massive channeling formation with the castle at its center. A leather-bound book lay open on a small table beside the altar. The text was written in an ancient script that Ayame recognized as the same used in Tenrai's fortress. Though she couldn't read most of it, certain phrases stood out. Royal vessel, blood moon gate, and most concerning, the demon's return. She was about to examine the book more closely when voices approached from outside. Quickly, Ayame slipped behind a large cabinet as the storehouse door opened. Minister Hamada entered, accompanied by a woman whose elaborate robes and distinctive white-painted face with red markings identified her unmistakably as Lady Kagami herself. "The preparations proceed as planned, Minister," Lady Kagami said, her voice melodious, yet underlaid with something inhuman. "Tonight's blood moon will provide the power necessary for the final step." Hamada appeared nervous, constantly wiping sweat from his brow, despite the chamber's chill. "And Lord Goda? My men report that Rikimaru has returned to the castle. If he warns the Lord..." "It matters not," Lady Kagami interrupted, approaching the altar. "The connection is established. The princess's essence flows into our vessel. Even now, she weakens as our proxy grows stronger." The sorceress lifted the doll, cradling it with disturbing tenderness. "For 3 nights, her blood has fed our cause. Tonight, when the moon reaches its zenith, the final candle will be lit, and her life force will open the gate. And Onikage will honor our arrangement?" Hamada asked. "I will have control of the province once Goda is eliminated." Lady Kagami's laugh sent shivers down Ayame's spine. "You will have what you deserve, Minister, as will we all." She placed the doll back on the altar and reached for the unlit candle. "It is time to begin the final phase. Light the signal fire on the eastern hill. Our agents within the castle will ensure the princess is moved to the ritual chamber." Hamada bowed deeply. "It shall be done, my lady." As they turned to leave, Lady Kagami paused, her head tilting slightly. "We are not alone, Minister." Ayame tensed, her hand moving to her blades. The sorceress turned, her eyes scanning the shadows. "Azuma Ninja, you conceal yourself well, but your breath betrays you. The chill of our artifacts affects even the most disciplined warrior." With inhuman speed, Lady Kagami flung her hand toward Ayame's hiding place. A blast of energy struck the cabinet, shattering it to splinters. Ayame rolled clear, drawing her twin blades as she came to her feet. "Your ritual ends here." Minister Hamada had drawn a sword, a blade she recognized as one of the cursed weapons from Tenrai's armory. "Kill her," he shouted to his guards. Lady Kagami made a dismissive gesture. "Your men would only interfere, Minister. This one is mine." The sorceress raised her hands, dark energy crackling between her fingers. "How fitting that an Azuma should witness our triumph. Your blood will strengthen the connection." Ayame dodged as a bolt of dark lightning struck where she had stood, the floor blackening and cracking from its touch. "Your master died by our blades," she taunted. circling to keep both opponents in view. Onikage will join him in oblivion. Onikage cannot die, Lady Kagami hissed, her beautiful face contorting with rage. He exists between realms now, beyond your mortal constraints. Tonight, he returns to claim what is his. She launched another attack, this one catching Ayame's sleeve and sending numbing cold up her arm. The kunoichi countered by flinging 3 shuriken in rapid succession. 2 missed as the sorceress moved with unnatural speed, but the 3rd embedded itself in her shoulder. Lady Kagami didn't flinch. Instead, she pulled the throwing star from her flesh, revealing bloodless grey tissue beneath her robes. "My body died serving Tenrai," she said, smiling at Ayame's shock. "What stands before you is merely a vessel sustained by Onikage's power." While Ayame focused on the sorceress, Hamada circled behind her, sword raised. Sensing his movement, Ayame dropped and swept her leg in a wide arc, catching the minister's ankles and sending him crashing into a shelf of artifacts. Glass shattered, releasing noxious fumes that filled the chamber. Using the distraction, Ayame leapt toward the altar and grabbed the princess's proxy doll. "No!" Lady Kagami hissed, lunging forward. Ayame slashed with her blade, catching the sorceress across the face. The cut revealed not blood, but a black substance that writhed like living shadow. With the doll tucked securely in her sash, Ayame threw her last smoke bomb at her feet. The explosion filled the chamber with thick black smoke, providing cover for her escape through a small window near the ceiling. Outside, alarm bells began to ring as Ayame sprinted across the compound's garden. Guards converged from all directions, their swords drawn. The acolytes at the perimeter had begun chanting, their voices raising a barrier of shimmering energy around the estate's boundaries. She reached the wall just as the barrier began to solidify. With one last desperate leap, she hurled herself through the narrowing gap, feeling the energy sear her skin as she passed through. Landing hard on the street beyond, Ayame clutched the doll protectively as she regained her feet. Behind her, Lady Kagami's enraged scream rose above the clamor of the alarm bells, a sound not fully human. "I must reach Rikimaru," Ayame gasped, the cold weight of the doll against her side serving as a constant reminder of what was at stake. Princess Kiku's life force was being drained even now, feeding the ritual that would bring Onikage back into the world of the living. As she disappeared into the shadows of Goda City's back alleys, storm clouds gathered overhead, unnatural in their perfect circular formation above Goda Castle. The blood moon ritual had begun, and time was running out. Thunder rolled across Goda Castle as Rikimaru knelt before Lord Goda in the private audience chamber. Rain lashed against the paper screens, the droplets black as night against the rice paper. 6 of Lord Goda's most trusted guards stood at attention along the walls, their faces grim in the lantern light. "This cannot be," Lord Goda whispered, his face ashen after hearing Rikimaru's report. "Princess Kiku has been ill, yes, but her handmaidens report improvement daily." "When did you last see the princess yourself, my lord?" Rikimaru asked, his voice respectful but urgent. Lord Goda's brow furrowed. Nearly a week. The court physician advised against visitors to prevent the spread of her illness. I must see her immediately, Rikimaru insisted, if what Onikage claimed is true. A commotion outside interrupted him. The door slid open to reveal Sakiya, Lord Goda's elderly advisor, his typically calm demeanor replaced by obvious distress. My lord, Sakiya bowed hastily. Forgive the interruption, but Princess Kiku's condition has worsened suddenly. The physician requests your presence. Lord Goda rose immediately. Take me to her. Rikimaru's hand moved to Izayoi's hilt. Something in Sekiya's manner raised his suspicions. A subtle shift in the advisor's typically measured speech. A feverish gleam in his eyes that hadn't been there before. My lord, Rikimaru said quietly, allow me to accompany you. Of course. Lord Goda nodded. As they moved through the castle corridors, Rikimaru noted with growing unease that the guards they passed seemed oddly vacant, their eyes unfocused. The servants they encountered moved with mechanical precision, their faces expressionless. They reached the eastern wing where Princess Kiku's chambers were located. How is my daughter? Lord Goda demanded. The fever reaches its crisis, my lord, one handmaiden replied without raising her eyes. The physician attends her within. Sakiya stepped forward. My lord, the physician requested that only you enter. Too many visitors will tax the princess's strength. Lord Goda nodded and moved toward the door. Rikimaru stepped forward as well, but Sakiya placed himself in the ninja's path. The physician was most insistent, Sakiya said, his voice hardening. Only Lord Goda. Rikimaru met the advisor's gaze directly. I go where my lord goes. Something flickered behind Sakiya's eyes, a yellow gleam that vanished so quickly Rikimaru might have imagined it. The advisor's hand moved to his waist, where a ceremonial dagger hung. Lord Goda, focused entirely on his daughter's condition, had already entered the chamber. The door began to slide closed behind him. In that instant, Rikimaru made his decision. Drawing Izayoi in a flash of steel, he struck Sakiya with the hilt, sending the advisor crashing to the floor. The handmaidens moved with startling speed, drawing concealed weapons from their robes. My lord, Rikimaru warned, kicking the door fully open as he parried a strike from the nearest false handmaiden. The scene within the princess's chamber froze Rikimaru's blood. Princess Kiku lay upon the bed, her skin pale as death. Dark circles beneath her closed eyes. Standing over her was not the court physician, but a blue-robed acolyte of Lady Kagami, a ceremonial dagger raised above the princess's heart. Lord Goda stood transfixed just inside the doorway, his body rigid, eyes wide with horror, yet unable to move, caught in some sorcerous paralysis. The dragon arrives, the acolyte said, lowering the dagger slightly. Lady Kagami foresaw your interference. Behind Rikimaru, the false handmaidens had revealed their true nature, their faces dissolving into featureless black masks. Release the princess and Lord Goda, Rikimaru commanded. Izayoi glowing with spiritual energy in his grip. The acolyte smiled coldly. "You mistake your position, Azuma dog. The ritual has already begun. The princess's life force feeds our master's return even now." As if to emphasize this point, Princess Kiku's body suddenly arched in pain, a soft cry escaping her lips, though she remained unconscious. Simultaneously, the strange black rain outside intensified, beating against the screens like desperate fists. "Your master died by my blade once," Rikimaru said, shifting into an attack stance. "He will not return while I draw breath." "Then your breath shall cease," the acolyte hissed, making a sharp gesture. The false handmaidens attacked in unison, their movements unnaturally coordinated. Rikimaru met their assault with cold precision, blade cutting through the first attacker with a spray of that same black powder he had encountered before. The second lunged low, aiming for his legs, but Rikimaru leapt over the strike and brought his heel down on the creature's spine with a sickening crack. The third handmaiden proved more challenging, wielding twin daggers with expert skill. As they fought, he noted that Lord Goda remained paralyzed, while the acolyte had begun a low chant over Princess Kiku, the ceremonial dagger now tracing symbols in the air above her body. With a desperate surge, Rikimaru disengaged from his opponent and hurled a kunai at the acolyte. The throwing blade struck true, embedding itself in the sorcerer's neck. The chanting stopped with a wet gurgle, but the acolyte merely smiled, black ichor seeping from the wound instead of blood. "Too late," the dying acolyte rasped. "The vessel awakens." Outside, the storm reached a crescendo, and a blood-red moonbeam pierced through the black clouds, shining directly through the chamber's window to illuminate Princess Kiku. Her body rose several inches above the bed, suspended by unseen forces. The remaining false handmaiden used his momentary distraction to strike, her blade slicing across his back. Pain flared, but Rikimaru had endured worse. Spinning with the blow's momentum, he brought Izayoi around in a deadly arc that separated the creature's head from its shoulders. As the body collapsed into black dust, Rikimaru rushed to Princess Kiku's side. Her skin had begun to glow with an unnatural red light that pulsed in rhythm with the storm outside. "What have they done to you?" he whispered, reaching for her. A barrier of energy repelled his hand, burning his flesh. "She becomes the gate," he wheezed. "Her royal blood, her innocent soul, the perfect vessel for our master's return." Lord Goda suddenly gasped, the paralysis spell broken with the acolyte's failing strength. He stumbled forward, reaching for his daughter. "No, my lord," Rikimaru warned, but too late. When Lord Goda touched the barrier surrounding his daughter, the energy flared blindingly. Both men were thrown backward against the wall. As Rikimaru regained his feet, he saw that the ritual had accelerated. Princess Kiku's body now hovered higher above the bed, her hair streaming upward as if underwater, her skin translucent enough to reveal the network of veins beneath, all pulsing with that same red light. The dying acolyte had begun laughing, the sound gurgling through the blood filling his lungs. "The temple activates," he gasped. "The stars align. The blood moon rises. Lady Kagami opens the way, and Onikage returns. With a final surge of strength, Rikimaru drove Izayoi through the man's heart, ending his maddened proclamations. The body dissolved entirely, leaving only black dust and empty robes. "We must move the princess from this chamber," Rikimaru said, helping Lord Goda to his feet. "The ritual is connected to specific locations. If we can break the alignment..." "Rikimaru," a new voice interrupted, familiar and welcome. Ayame appeared in the doorway, breathing hard, her clothing torn and singed in places. In her arms, she carried what appeared to be a doll, an exact replica of Princess Kiku. "The proxy," Ayame explained quickly, holding up the doll. "They've been using it to channel the princess's life force. I took it from Hamada's compound." Hope flared in Rikimaru's chest. "Can we use it to break the connection?" "Perhaps," Ayame said, approaching the floating princess. "But we need to act quickly. Lady Kagami has already begun the final phase at the Temple of the Sleeping Dragon." Outside, the blood moon had fully emerged from the storm clouds, its crimson light bathing the castle in an otherworldly glow. The black rain had stopped, replaced by an unnatural stillness. Lord Goda looked from his daughter to the ninja who had served him faithfully for so many years. "Save her," he pleaded. "Whatever the cost, save my daughter." Rikimaru nodded grimly. "Ayame, stay with Lord Goda and the princess. Try to disrupt the connection using the proxy. I must go to the temple and stop Lady Kagami before the gateway fully opens." "Tenchu may already be there," Ayame reminded him. "You said he took the mountain path hours ago." "Then I pray we are not too late," Rikimaru replied, moving toward the window. "If I have not returned by dawn." He left the sentence unfinished, but Ayame understood. If they failed to stop the ritual, there would be no dawn, not for any of them. As the white-haired ninja disappeared into the night, Ayame turned her attention to the doll in her hands and the floating princess before her. Somewhere in the castle, a bell began to toll, though no human hand pulled its rope. 12 sonorous rings that echoed across the province like a death knell. The hour of the blood moon had arrived.